Today our ornament is bags of grain. Our story is famine and plenty. I suppose he came back, said a voice the next day. It wouldn't be much of a story of Joseph. Much of a story? Much of a story? The Bible wasn't written to entertain you, you know. The chisel trembled in the leathery old hands. And no, Joseph didn't come back. He stayed in Egypt. He had a gift, didn't he? God had given him a gift. Joseph understood dreams. Not his own, maybe, but other people's dreams. In Egypt, things went from bad to worse. Although Joseph worked hard, he ended up in prison, convicted of a crime he had not committed. He felt hopeless and lost. But in Egypt, people valued dreams and dreaming. When his fellow prisoners had nightmares, Joseph explained what the dreams meant, and he was always right. The prisoners were astounded, but they forgot Joseph, of course, the moment the sunlight shone in their eyes again. Luckily, when the Pharaoh, the ruler of the country, was himself plagued with dreams that none of his advisors could interpret, someone remembered the Hebrew slave rotting in the city jail. "Send for him," said Pharaoh, black-eyed for want of sleep. "You dreamed of cattle clambering out of the Nile," said Joseph as he knelt before the throne. "First 7 sleek, fat cows, then 7 bony, thin ones. The thin cows opened their mouths and swallowed up the fat ones." Pharaoh flinched from the memory of his dream. "But what does it mean? Can you tell me that, Hebrew?" "For 7 years, Egypt's harvest will be marvelous, the granaries full of grain. But for 7 years after that, every harvest will fail, and your people will go hungry, unless you take steps to prevent it." So impressed was Pharaoh, so taken with this dream reader, that he made Joseph governor of Egypt. From then on, Joseph spoke on the Pharaoh's behalf and was almost as powerful as the Pharaoh himself. The dreams had come from God, of course. So too did the 7 years of plenty. Joseph gave orders for all the surplus food to be stored in great granaries and for nothing to go to waste. Sure enough, there followed 7 years of famine, but thanks to Joseph's careful planning, no one in Egypt starved. Far away in Joseph's homeland, the sheep shook on their thin legs. The brothers' stomachs were empty. "Go into Egypt where the granaries are full," said their father Jacob, "and buy grain." His old face, drooping like the wax from a candle, had not smiled since the day they brought him Joseph's multicolored coat stained with blood. So that is how Joseph came to see his brothers again. They were kneeling in his chamber of state, asking permission to buy grain from the great Egyptian granaries. They did not recognize him, of course. He wore Egyptian robes, an Egyptian wig. His eyes were black-rimmed with Egyptian kohl. Besides, 20 years had passed since the business of the coat, the pit, the merchant caravan. But Joseph knew his brothers, oh yes, all 10 of them. 10? Where was the 11th? Where was little Benjamin, the youngest? Joseph questioned them, demanded to know why one brother had stayed behind. To their dismay, he sent them home to fetch Benjamin. "But our father," they protested, "he relies on Benjamin. His whole life is bound up in the boy. If anything were to happen..." They might as well have been talking to the pyramids themselves. Joseph was adamant. So Benjamin was fetched, and the brothers were allowed to load their pack animals with good grain and to set off, marveling at the generosity of that governor of Egypt, marveling at the splendor of the Egyptian civilization. Then the soldiers came after them, stopped them, and began to search for stolen goods. "We took nothing, on our lives, nothing," protested the brothers. "If you find anything on one of us, let the culprit be put to death." How they must have regretted those words when the guards reached into Benjamin's saddlebag and pulled out the silver cup and brandished it in their faces. Not Benjamin! Benjamin would never! Their hands felt helpless by their sides. Their knees failed under them. Joseph, who had given orders for the silver cup to be planted among their belongings, looked on with grim satisfaction. His brothers were as afraid now as Joseph had been 20 years before, when, wrist tied, he had stumbled into slavery behind the merchant camel train. Childhood dreams swam before Joseph's eyes. Their sheaves of corn flattened before his own, their stars dimmed by his brilliance. And Joseph went into a side room and wept for all the lost years, for all the broken dreams, for the marvelous and confusing ways in which God worked out his plan. When Joseph revealed his true identity to his brothers, there were no reproaches, no apologies, only tears of joy and relief and healing. Jacob was sent for, a frail old man rattling his weary bones over dusty roads, to be reunited with the son he had thought dead for 20 years. And Jacob's family was not alone in finding a new home in a new country. Many more Hebrews traveled to Egypt to escape famine and stayed on there as settlers along the fertile Nile River. God had promised to take care of them, and perhaps this move to Egypt was his way of doing it. That the Egyptians worshiped their boatload of animal-headed gods, the Hebrews would stay loyal to their one true God. After all, they were his chosen people, his favored sons and daughters. Surely they were the ones to whom he would give the best gifts, the ones he could not help but love the best. "You say that as if it turned out different," said the boy. "It did," said the carpenter. "Within a few generations, life in Egypt went horribly wrong for the Hebrews. So God broke his promise? He never promised life would be easy, only that he would stay close to his people, the children of Israel. You can tell me tomorrow." The old man gave an irritable groan. As the church door slammed shut behind his visitor, he called after him, "No promises," but probably too late to be heard.